Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Ms. Justine Lutz, Mr. Roshan Kublal, Mr. Sipiwe Mchunu, Mr. Piyush Khandelwal, distinguished guests and online viewers. Namaskar and welcome to episode 8 of Bharat Ek Anubhuti, India a Feeling, an online travelogue series. Today, in our midst, we have two very interesting members of society, and that is Ms. Justine Lutz and Mr. Roshan Kublal, to share their experiences on incredible India with us. To commence today's program, I would like to welcome our first guest speaker, and that is Ms. Justine Lutz, who is a screenwriter based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Her Christmas movie, Herb and Moon, aired on Mnet and Showmax this past December. She's written on numerous television series, crime, drama, comedy for various channels, including Netflix and Showmax, many of which have won awards. Her background is in documentary making. She's created inserts for Carte Blanche and Carte Blanche Africa for 6 years, amongst other documentaries. She's had short stories and articles published. Subjects close to her heart are the environment, animal rights, stories of human triumph, and those that dissolve the boundaries between real and the magical. We welcome today Ms. Justine Lutz for her remarks on episode 8 of Bharat Ek Anubhuti.
Namaskar. A very deep thank you for the tremendous privilege of being with all of you to speak about my most favorite subject in the whole world, which is India. So I warmly greet each and every one of you. By your grace, I will find the words to express. I'm going to start my story in the middle with a random encounter that I had on a dusty street in India, which in many ways encapsulates my experience of Bharat Mata. So there I was in Rishikesh, and I was off to do an errand. I'd been learning a very little Hindi, and in my mind I was going to do my errand and I was going to have a chance to practice my Hindi on whoever I encountered, and that was what I thought the day was about. But of course, India always has its own ideas. So on this street, I caught eyes with a man dressed in the orange robes of a sadhu, and still my stubborn mind was thinking about Hindi. And he smiled at me, and I said to him, "Aap kaise hai? How are you?" And he looked at me, and he had these deep brown eyes full of benevolence and compassion. And his answer was Ananda. And I just felt very deeply humbled, because this is what India does. And I had this real feeling that he knew exactly what he was talking about. This wasn't a snappy answer. And I just felt deeply humbled that this man who had found bliss within himself had just come to show me that my day was not about running around doing my worldly duties. It was to remember the sacred. And for me, that is the great blessing that I've received from India, is to be reminded of the sacred. And again, this is the repeated experience. You walk down a road, you meet the most beautiful cows, and sometimes people have put a tilak on the cow, or just walking down a busy street in Mumbai, just watching people pass a cow, they touch the cow, and then their hearts. You don't just simply go and swim in a river. You recognize that this river is a goddess, and you revere the river. There are pujas done to the rivers, and you are blessed by the rivers. So for me, that is what India is. But my affinity with India started some time before that. My story really begins in a way when I was in university. I was in my early 20s, And I'd had a constellation of life challenges at the time. And I had come to a point where I'd felt very, very disillusioned. I'd had the youthful and naive idea that a tertiary institution would be a place of higher learning. And I was rudely awakened to discover that that is not the case. And actually, I'd found a gamut of academics who were really playing games. They fought to win an argument. They didn't actually seem to care about finding the truth. And this was very much in contradiction to what I had expected. And the result being that I'd entered quite a terrible state of despair and disillusionment. And I felt as though I couldn't get out of this. And I kind of lost all meaning. And somewhere in this time, somebody gave me a book, and that book was Autobiography of a Yogi by Sri Paramahansa Yoganandaji. And I remember looking at the face of this yogi and just knowing I need to find these yogis. And so I did. Somebody invited me to come with them to practice Hatha Yoga. And this was before Hatha Yoga had become something that's trending. So it was a little bit rare. And I was taken by this friend to the Shivananda School of Yoga in Johannesburg. And I started practicing Hatha Yoga, and I found it was the one thing that seemed to help. I didn't really understand why, and it didn't matter, but it seemed to be helping. And at this ashram, I met two incredible swamis. The one swami is my teacher today. His name is Swami Ishvara Mayananda. And because I'm not born in the culture, so I didn't understand a lot. But all I knew is that when these two swamis spoke, they were the first people I'd met in my entire life who actually really knew something. It wasn't clever verbiage. And now, of course, looking back, I understand that a true yogi has entered deeply into meditation, understands the nature of the mind, and has the living knowledge of how to rise out of suffering. I didn't understand all of that at that time, but I did experience that with them. So this brings me to my first trip to India, which happened in the year 2000. I was very fortunate. I traveled in a small group. We went with Swami Karunananda Mataji. And at this point, we went to Rishikesh, and Swami Chidananda was the president at the time. At that point, he'd gone into retirement. He'd gone into seclusion. He was very old in body. And in fact, he'd made sure that he told nobody where he is, because people tend to flock and they want his darshan. So we absolutely got the surprise of our lives, because on the very day we arrived at the Divine Life Society, he came out of his seclusion unexpectedly, and he stayed there for that period until the day of our departure. So I can only put down this unfathomable good fortune to the fact that I was traveling with a Swami and he was his sannyas guru. I don't know, you can't understand. So I will try to explain what it was like meeting him, and words are not really adequate. But I have a very strong memory. Everyone, because now word spreads like wildfire, and now everyone comes because Swami Chidananda has come out of seclusion. And there we are, we packed in a massive hall. And he's brought in a car to the entrance. He can't walk very well at this stage of his advanced years. And with a struggling body, he enters the room, and I remember seeing the air become lighter. It was like somebody had put their hand on a dimmer switch and they'd literally turned it up. Everything became lighter. And this wasn't some freaky chakra vision. This was like a physical thing that happened. And to confirm this experience, just to my right, a woman took Arti off his living form. And these encounters, I think, they have a very, very profound experience. You suddenly encounter somebody who has so far traversed the confines of being a human. You know, sometimes today people speak about transgender. This is a transhuman. They have broken free of the trammels of the human mind. They are something else that you in your little human imagining could never have imagined exists. So we had satsangs with him. We went to everything that we possibly could. But the other tremendous blessing is that we were shown around by his personal assistant, who's Swami Vimalananda Saraswati. And this is also a spiritual mountain of a man. He later became the president. He's now in spirit. But never in my life have I experienced such abject humility as I experienced with Swami Vimalanandaji. And he took us to these many, many amazing sites. He took us to Vashishta Guha, where the sage Vasishta is said to have attained enlightenment. He took us to the ashram of Anandamayi Ma, that sage who used to dance in divine rapture. She used to dance like a leaf, they said. He took us to the residence of the late Neem Karoli Baba. And all of this time, he would tell us his stories about his life with Swami Shivananda and with Swami Chidananda. And I have one very clear memory that he'd taken us to a temple. And everyone had left their shoes outside, obviously, but it was a little bit messy. And the shoes were piling up. And I remember coming out to discover, with a bit of horror, that he had literally with his own hands moved our shoes to somewhere where we could easily find them. And it's a terrible feeling that this tremendous soul has actually done something like touch your shoes. But that was him. That was him to a T, you know, and he traveled the world with Swami Chidananda, and a great sage in his own right, but he always said, my job was to carry Swami Chidananda's luggage. And that was him. And what one learns from these great, shining, luminous beings is that where the world tells you to earn money, be famous, become popular, they care nothing for that. Swami Chidananda was known to say, become a cipher. And these are living manifestations of this. They have chosen to become nothing. I work as a writer, and my job, we very much are examining what is a character's motive and what is their hidden motive. And what I can say about these people is that they have no motive. And you cannot imagine that this exists, but I can tell you that it does. So sometimes people ask me, did I have a culture shock in India? And my answer to that is no, I did not. I'll tell you when I had a culture shock. When I came home from India after that very first trip, and I came back to the life I knew, I no longer recognized it. For about 6 months, I can say I was completely dysfunctional. I managed to carry on doing what you need to do to stay alive, but I don't know what had happened to me. And that was a culture shock. And the other thing that people ask me sometimes is they're concerned about encountering poverty in India. And my response to that is, India taught me that I had been living in the most abject spiritual poverty. And it was only through my trips to India that I discovered what richness truly is. So I've had many subsequent trips to India. I've obviously been back to Rishikesh, to the Divine Life Society. I've had the tremendous good fortune of going to Tiruvannamalai to behold Arunachala, the manifestation of Lord Shiva in the form of a mountain, and the wonderful temple there, and spent time at Ramana Ashram. And Sri Ramana Maharishi is, you know, although he's passed on, his energy is very much there. And another remarkable sage that people used to travel from all over India and indeed from all over the world just to be in his presence. And he was known as the silent sage. So they didn't go there to hear him speak. Sometimes he would just be sitting. Sometimes he would be cutting tomatoes. But they would go to every effort in the world to be in the presence of this illuminated being, to have the fabric of their lives forever changed. I also spent some time at Ananda Ashram in the south and the north of Kerala. And sometimes, obviously, this is the home of Papa Ramdas, who wandered as a mendicant, repeating the name of Lord Ram, and so found his true self. And of course, Mother Krishnabai, who lived there with him. And again, their energy is still very much there. It's held in the places, and I believe that it's held in the practices and the devotion of the people who see the value of this. So sometimes people, once somebody said to me, they asked if this is spiritual tourism, but I don't very much like this term. I mean, it's fine if you want to go to India and, you know, have a photo opportunity with a Mahatma and then rush on to have your tequilas at sundown. It's fine. You know, India will give you what you are meant to receive. But I'm trying to discuss a different subject here. And I can only describe it as a divine alchemy. Because these experiences forever shift what you are. And it's a tremendous kindness that exists in the algorithm of the universe. But honestly, it's also quite violent. It's not always easy. My first trip, I went back to my diary and I couldn't believe how much I'd spoken about sleeping. Things go on within your being. We've had other times when I've just become very sick, and I just believe that it's being in contact with such high vibration. You know, things are going on and changing. And yeah, remembering all of this is I'm very grateful for the opportunity, because it's like opening a vast treasure chest and polishing these jewels and just bringing them to life again. And I've been very humbled by the tremendous graciousness of India and the blessings. That honestly, sometimes it's hard to feel worthy of such riches. And I've been so overwhelmed by the vastness of Hinduism. You know, you can interpret Hinduism as you wish. If you wish to worship traditionally in a very orthodox manner, you may. If you wish to have honor the divine rebellion that might exist within you, there is place for that. You can worship the gods, the ancestors. You can worship the demons if you want. If you are a borderline agnostic, there is space for all of this in Hinduism. There's nothing petty and controlling about it. So I'm just going to end with one funny story. So I was traveling in Andhra Pradesh, and it was my wish to go to Tirupati. So the arrangements had been made, and I wanted to do the trip from the bottom up to the Venkateshwara temple, which you climb over 3,500 stairs. So I was told very clearly, you can do this whole trip, but just know that if you get to the temple, you might not be allowed in. Such big crowds in India, and people do get turned away. And certainly if there's a lot of local people, you must understand that as a visitor, you might not have the opportunity. I said, it's no problem. You know, in South Africa, we say, tata ma chance. So, and of course, along the way, I mean, I was very happy to pay my homage to all the representations of the incarnations of Lord Vishnu along the way. I was quite happy. That was more than enough for me. I finally do that and I get to the top, to the temple, and I'm given a form to fill in, and I duly fill in the form and I hand it in, and a gentleman there hands me a note. And I look at this note and I see he's classified me as a non-resident Indian, an NRI. So because of that, I can now go into the temple. So I think, brother, should I tell you that you've made a mistake? And then I thought, sometimes you mustn't ask questions. You must just say Vishnu Kripasi. And so it was that I managed to have darshan of Lord Venkateshwara. And now sometimes I find I miss India terribly. It's like a terrible longing. And I just laugh because I always remind myself of this experience at Tirupati. And I say to myself, at Tirupati they know, although you do not reside in India, don't forget that the abundance of India's blessings forever reside in you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Justine Lutz, for that very interesting experience and journey, sharing it with us on Bharat Ek Anubhuti. We will now be playing a video on Incredible India.
Palace on wheels.
I think the hospitality of people in India and people on the Palace on Wheels exceeded all my expectations.
It's the perfect introduction to India. Fort, with its liveliness, the village that lives inside the fort, it gave us a sense to experience India how it might have been in the past.
Like Taj Mahal was like, whoa, and then like beautiful, and then you learn in school like, oh, this is what built for love, and it's like, oh my God.
So as we're going along on the train, we're trying all these different curries and spices and colours of the dishes, and that's a great way to explore India, is also through the culinary art. You know, Indian food is one of my favourites. And it's just been a nice, fun-packed week of adventure to see all the different sides of India.
Our next guest speaker is Mr. Roshan Kublal. And Mr. Roshan Kublal has his BCom honors and in lower secondary teacher's diploma and certificate in a state agency. He is semi-retired secondary school educator facilitator at UNISA in academic literacy with focus on quantitative literacy. He believes in continuous e-learning, therefore he has uploaded about 39 DVDs on maths basic skills for secondary students for free viewing on his YouTube channel titled Coobs 123. He's been a facilitator and assessor in CERTA programs, ex-lecturer at Production Management Institute, Mopak Business School. He is an ardent community worker, active at the Sarva Dharma Ashram, Gandhi Settlement, Phoenix Shantik Foundation, Phoenix Hindu Unity Forum, the Sri Sanatan Dharma Satsang Sabha, and Verulam Hindu Unity Forum. We welcome today on episode 8 for his remarks, Mr. Roshan Kublal.
Thank you very, very much. Let me begin with thanks to Dr. G and his team at the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center and the Consul General team in Durban. It's a real pleasure to be with you on this program today. This has spoken now and given us the spiritual basis for every human being that must have. And what I'm going to do is my remarks are going to be based on the next part that we need in every human being is the kind of a seva basis, because first must come the spirit. And when you have identified God in yourself and in everybody else, then you can start doing some seva. So I'm not, what I've done is I'm going to use some headings to discuss my experiences. So India is our motherland. While we are born South Africans and we are patriotic South Africans, the thing is our great forefathers came from India, and so we are linked by birth to India, firstly, and then secondly by spirit, and thirdly by culture also. And India is our motherland, and we pay great respect to Bharat Mata. So I will start first by saying that to me, India is a land of miracles. Not the miracle of turning stone into gold or anything, but I'll just give you an example. People visit various cities in India. So I'll take the city of Jaipur. To me, the city of Jaipur is a city of miracles. Why? Because in that city, Jaipur is the head office of what is called the Jaipur Foot. And this organization actually foots millions, has already footed millions of hands and legs for people, prosthetic. And I was so impressed with this. My nephew Googled this, and then my nephew and I made sure that we journey and we go to this headquarters and we find out how they do things and how does it operate. And it's so simple. At their headquarters or any one of their branches in India, people who need a limb or an arm can just walk inside there and get fitted free of charge. Now, to me, that's a great miracle. Unbelievable. And so we were so impressed with it. And then we also became a little bit of a partner in it. What we found is that there are people in many villages in India who don't even know, firstly, about this miracle. And secondly, some know, but cannot afford that little bit of train fare and a little bit of accommodation cost, because you can go there on day one, get fitted on day one and go back home. Or you can go on day one, get fitted on day two and go back home. And so we have set in a system in our own way with Ananda Marga in India, and we are sending village people now to Jaipur Fort. And so for me, India is like a lesson in seva. It's beyond the limits, and it's such a great seva. I'm just giving one example. And the good news is that Jaipur Fort will come to South Africa sometime. So we're just hoping for that to happen. And one other thing I also did in India, in Bangalore, at the Jain temple, every year, it's a fixed program. In the second week of January, they have a camp where in 2 weeks, they fit over 2,000 people with arms, legs, calipers, or walking aids. So these were the greatest lessons I've learned in what I will call miracle to serve humanity. And then I'll go on to the second topic. The second theme I'm going to talk is about ashram visits. Yes, we must all go and visit ashrams. We must go to Rishikesh. We must go to Haridwar, etc. For me, Rishikesh and Haridwar is also in the villages of India. So what I've done is, on several visits, I visited a village called Kitandur, 70 kilometers out of Bangalore. I've gone there. There is an ashram, Anandamarga ashram, and they run a school. I've stayed in the school. I've taught in the school. I've enjoyed my interaction with the children. We've arranged lunch with the children, and we had a nice get together. And then I was quite surprised when I spoke to the principal and said, look, can we arrange an excursion for the senior children? There's about 300 children in the school, just for the senior. And the great thing about India schools is most of the schools have their own buses. He said, no problem. So we packed 40 children and staff into the bus, and we leave Kitandur, and we traveled, I think it was 3 or 4 hours to reach Mysore city, see Mysore palace. En route that night, we stay in another ashram, and then come back the next day. So what I'm saying is that the Rishikesh and the Haridwar is in the villages. And also from this particular place, we were also able to take the children to a Sai Baba annual sports day, which is halfway between Bangalore and Puttaparthi. I'm not too sure about the pronunciation of this village name, but it is Mutandi Valley. And it was amazing for me as a South African, fairly conservative South African, to see that people in India, in a religious institution, in their sports, doing parachute landing, driving motorcycles in reverse, driving motorcycles over fire. And then it taught us that, look, religion is not only about prayer, but it is about life and it's about living. So it was an amazing, amazing experience. And when you see the smiles on the children's face, then you realize not living your life in vain. And then you realize that it's not me, it's not my family, it's not my friends. I'm only here as an instrument of God, and I had to do a job today. And I want to say that these things are not costly at all to do in India. And therefore, anybody who's going on a tour, forget about one supper in a five-star hotel, take that same money, and you can bring so much of joy to children in a village. Also in that village, I did some interesting things, like I saw how silkworms are bred and how the village does this industry and feeds into the main silk industry. So it taught me a lesson for home industry for South Africa. And for those people who go to India and they're always in a hurry and they can't go and do things like this 70 kilometers out of Bangalore, then I want to say that as soon as you land in Mumbai, there is an ashram and a school right there in the slum, which is near the airport. You can take the metro, and in 15 minutes, the metro will take you and drop you at Gat Gopar, where the school is and where the ashram is and where you can go. So I also went there, I've stayed there, I've taught over there. Like the most interesting thing I've done there is that we did a short peace walk for world peace in that school with Mr. Yogesh Mathuria. Now, Mr. Yogesh Mathuria is an international walker for peace. He's come here, he's walked in South Africa, and he came there to that school. When I was there, we invited him, he came over and we interacted with the children, and we marched around the school just in that area. And it was a very, very interesting experience. So these are some of the things that we can do when we go there. And to me, so that is what an ashram visit must end in and bring about. And then I'm a South African, I'm a volunteer at Gandhi settlement. So when I go to India, I must find the Gandhi connection. So So from Mumbai, on one of my visits, I made sure that I go to Pune. Some people say Pune and some people say Pune. I'm used to saying Pune. And it was my pleasure to, because when you walk in Phoenix in the settlement, you think you're walking, maybe Gandhiji walked here and I'm walking in his footsteps. And so when you get there to that Aga Khan Palace, I think it is called Aga Khan Palace in Pune, where he was imprisoned, then you get once again another connection with Gandhiji and his teachings and his legacy. So I encourage people to go there. I'll encourage them. And the other interesting thing about Pune was that my wife is a girl guider. So the Girl Guider World Home is set in Pune, and it is called Sangam. It's very nice. When we speak in South Africa, they say it's called Sangam, but it is Sangam. And what a wonderful experience it was to go there and to be one with the Girl Guides people of India. And you really feel that connection and that happiness when we had lunch over there. So if you go to India, you have to do some dance or some music. You have to be part of the art and the culture there too. So anybody who goes there will usually do the city tours. But what I do is I always look for the English newspapers and I watch what is happening because I'm a person who likes art and culture and drama. So I'm just giving an example. I went to the Bharat Vidya Bhavan Center and I watched a whole musical. Now, watching a musical in my own mother tongue and so polished and so perfect and in such a fantastic theater like Playhouse, equivalent to a Playhouse, was a great experience for me. And just on the sly side, but when the return trip, the taxi man did overcharge me. But that's the fun part because they charge you, it's 5 Rand extra. So no problem, you pay with a smile. And so that was there. And then also in terms of art and culture, when I was in Chennai, I checked the paper. I went and saw a dance drama presentation. And after the thing finished, we were sitting outside and having some cold drinks and refreshments. And one of the participants came with her teacher and sat down at our table. So it's such a nice feeling and such a nice experience. So when we go there, we must try and get these things. And in fact, I was also fortunate that this school in the slum in Gatkopar, one of their events, the ones they invited me, where they did a cultural evening. And believe me, when they do a cultural evening, it may be in the slum, but the stage, the lighting, the sound, professional, like Playhouse. So it's amazing. So you have to go beyond what I will call the travel agent's itinerary to get into these places, you see. And yeah, and then of course, many of my family members have already gone to the Kumbh Mela. I'm hoping to get there one of the days or one of the years when it comes up. And I also have a dream to go and sit in a cricket stadium in India one day and watch a match, which I really enjoy on TV. But I can just imagine what the vibrations will be in reality. And then India is also a place great for medical tourism. And I've benefited from that a lot with my family members and my friends. And you got a choice. You can go for the Ayurvedic treatment. I've gone to the Ayurvedic centers in Bangalore, in Patna, and many other places, and go there and get some Ayurvedic treatment. And all these are fairly affordable. Or you can go for allopathic treatment. I'm just giving you an example. For as little as 1,500 Rand, South African currency, you can go and have a complete checkup from everything, from all these medical terms I don't know, but they'll check your heart, they'll do all your blood tests, they will do that sound thing, ultrasound. It's amazing. And all this is available to us in our motherland, and we must go and we must benefit from it. And of course, India is also gives us our 1860 connection. Our great grandparents came from there. So when we land there, we want to connect. Many of our family and friends have actually found the villages from where they came. They have connected with them. And we do have friends in India who can help with that kind of connection. And if anybody is watching this and they are South African and they don't know where they came from, they can always come to our small town, Verulam. We have a history center here that will help them to trace back their roots, and they can go and find their roots down there. So it has been a real great. And then there are other things that we have done in India, like people have invited us to weddings, both, I will say, these weddings that splash money and have about 30 food stalls and a great music entertainment and a whole hall transformed into a ship and all those kinds of funny things, to even an ordinary, simple village wedding that lasted only half an hour. So it's very nice to go there and to visit these villages and to get all these experiences. And another very interesting thing for me is in India is that you can see how people have learned to survive. They are not just depending on the government. And I think that what we as the South African government also has to learn from India is that there must be a small degree of relaxation on rules so that people can start with micro business and then develop themselves step by step and become entrepreneurs. So India is, when you walk in the streets, I'll give you one small story. I was going for supper one night and a man was selling belts. And then to get rid of him, I said, no, I'm going for supper. I'll come back and buy the belt. And believe it or not, he stood outside the restaurant till we finished having supper. And when we came out, sir, you promised to buy the belt after supper. So that is how serious they are about entrepreneurship and about getting success in their business and so on. So there's many great lessons in economy, lessons in education, lessons in survival that India is teaching us, and that we must go there and we must benefit from it. And if you really want to, Gandhiji said, an ounce of help is worth more than a ton of pity. So when you get there, you don't have to start feeling pity. You just need to do something. And there's so many opportunities to do so many things in India. And since you told that I have a certificate estate agency, I'm also always looking at property. And India has some very nice mega cities coming up. So if you're in a tour, go and visit some of these developments, Navi Mumbai, or Swaminarayan City, or something like that. And you can see that they really going world class. So we get that. And the other things that I have done, I'm not suggesting everybody else must do, but I have taken many train rides in the local train. But you must go off peak time. Never go there at rush time, you won't survive. But I've done local train rides off peak time, and I've traveled and I've lived out in an ashram 100 kilometers away from Mumbai, where they are just rural, and they have set the whole place up. It's a Gandhian kind of philosophy where they're trying to be self-sufficient. So there's so many different kinds of experiences. What I do hope that must happen in the future between India and South Africa, because of my academic involvement, I hope we can start some kind of student exchanges, students from there coming to South Africa. Even we can host them in our homes and send them back, if a group of 20 came, even some lecturers. We have a problem here in maths and science education. I know that the help for that maths and science education is there in abundance in India, and we can get some of that over here, run some workshops here, short workshops. If they come here for a month's holiday too, they can run some workshops, help to develop some people, etc. So yes, India is a place where you get connected automatically when you go there. You forget who you are, you become one of them, and you enjoy the pushing and the shoving when it's very busy. You just be one, enjoy whatever it is, and you can put on weight because food is very cheap there. So I've had some wonderful experiences in India, and yes, I'm just waiting for pandemic to end and the flights to restart. In fact, my brother's already booked his ticket and he's going on 14th of next month. And but I think I'll be a little more conservative, and but definitely I'll be heading to India again. I've now made it like almost once a year. It's like an annual thing because there's so much of for me to learn, so much for me to share, and to feel a connection universally. So wonderful place, India. We feel at home. Everybody goes there, feels at home. Thank you very much. God bless, and maybe all meet in India one day.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Mr. Roshan Kublal, for that very unique experience, sharing it with us. We definitely enjoyed hearing those experiences. We've come to the end of today's program. That is episode 8 of Bharat Ek Anubhuti, India A Feeling. I would like to welcome Mr. C.P.V.M. Chunu from the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban to render this evening's vote of thanks.
Namaskar. Namaskar. Greetings to all of you. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, I am so honored today to deliver a vote of thanks on today's episode 8 of the program India A Feeling, an online travelogue series. I'd like to thank two of our online guests, Miss Justine Lutji, a writer and a filmmaker from Johannesburg, Mr. Roshan Kublal, an educator from Durban. Both their stories were very touching, were very informative, because they were talking about the India that we all know. So we were touched. Miss Justine G, Roshan G, Dhanyabad to both of you. To the Director of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Sristi Harinarayan, Piyush Kandelwal, Dhanyabad for taking part on today's program. To all our online viewers who participated today, we'd like to say thank you very much for taking time with us. Please visit our Facebook page so that you'll be updated about all cultural programs organized by Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Durban. On that note, to all of you good people, have a wonderful evening. Namaskar.